Hi everyone, and welcome to Biology 2759, Physiology and Pathophysiology for LPNs. I'm your instructor, Dr. Sarah Wrigley McDonald. I am an instructor with the biology department, but I've been teaching for the nursing faculty for their biology courses since 2007. And I've been teaching online for about a decade now. I also teach at NBCC Miramichi for their PN and PSW programs. So I have a bit of a unique perspective in that I teach in both the LPN program and the RN programs. So this course is really going to be a bit of a bridge between the background that you've gotten in your LPN programs and the level of content required for you entering the third year BN program. So as I walk you through this, you're going to see there's some review information and there's the information here for assessment. So basic navigation, across the top you have your home button. If you ever get lost into a folder, hit home and it'll bring you back here. Your content, assessments, communication, resources, libraries, etc. Now I do know that NBCC uses this platform as well, so if you're a more recent student, you're probably fairly familiar with this. I'm going to assume you're not a recent student, and I'm going to go through them anyway. So, best way to navigate here is to hit Content. From the Content button, we can kind of see everything. So I'm going to click the Table of Contents, because that's where you'll start too. So from here, you'll see you have all your folders. Start with the instructor introduction, which basically just tells you who I am, contact information and hours, the video message, which is what I'm recording right now, this very important document, which is your syllabus. Please read it in a detailed fashion. So again, if you're coming from NBCC, this would be the equivalent to your course outline. Lastly, here's your course guide. Now your course guide, I always say, is kind of your go-to. So it's your first go-to when you have a question, right? So if your question is how to get started, in here you'll find your syllabus, a link to this video, how to navigate the course content, a video on study tips, course resources, etc. If your question's about the exams, it'll give you all that information as well, including a list of all the possible short answer questions. And yes, you did read that right. I give you a list that is entirely inclusive. Any short answer question on your midterms or final exams will be found on this list. I will not ask you anything outside of that. So it makes for a really great study guide. It's not all inclusive, right? It's not going to include every question. It's not going to include the multiple choice questions, right? But it'll give you a very detailed study guide. So lots of other information here, how to order a transcript. You're asking about course content, marks, study advice, you come to me. You're asking for course payment registration, etc. It'll show you who to go to. So if you have a question on the course, I do ask that you come here first. Emails, I do try and respond within 24, 48 hours. However, I generally have 200 to 300 students per term, so it may take me a couple of days. If it takes me a couple of days and it can be found here, it's a lot faster for you to come to the course guide and get your answer rather than waiting for me to respond. So I'm going to come back up to Table of Contents. As we keep going, these are the files that are all housed within that course guide. So we can kind of skip over those because they're there for you. Now, for each module, you're going to see the same basic layout. You have your PowerPoint file, and this is what the recorded lectures are based on. So you do have full recorded lectures for everything. And that link is up here in course resources. Then you have two objectives files. So you have an objective file for review and an objective file for assessment. So this is really where, you know, the LPN program is significantly hard, right? We cover a lot of material, and I want to make sure that I'm not repeating stuff you already know. However, if there's some of you who haven't been in school in a while, or hey, a lot of the stuff you take first year, so maybe you forgot it. This is the information that I expect you to know from your previous learning. And so these are the objectives I want you to read over. If you don't know the answer, it's up to you to go look it up. So this is not going to be covered in the content of my lectures. However, this is expected for you to know as you move forward in the program. So you can see Module 1, right? Chapters, 1, 4, 8, and then Chapter 9. So there's some basics there. A lot of it you're going to find is very straightforward, or it's a more complicated process that you would have gone through in one of your courses. So that's very different than this file. On this file, you're going to find the objectives that I will be assessing you on, right? That's why it's called Objectives for Assessment. So in here, you're going to see some things that sound familiar. So things like diffusion and osmosis, right? You would have done that in your LPN program. However, I'm going to take that and I'm going to increase the amount of information. So some of these are going to be familiar to you, but I want to add a level of complexity that wasn't in your courses. So for those objectives, things are going to be a little bit easier. So as you go through some of these, simple things like naming benign and malignant, you probably know. 5 ways in which benign and malignant are different, you probably know. But again, I want to reinforce and kind of add a little bit. And that's going to be consistent with all of your modular folders. So there's 8 modules for the course. In each of the modules, you're also going to find case studies. Now, notice here that they're labeled as optional, meaning they're not here for assessment. So you do have assigned case studies. So these ones I'm going to mark you on. These ones are optional. Again, you work through them, get your answer. The answers are right here. So this is Grossman, which is the author, case study, chapter 4. This is Grossman case study answers, chapter 4. All right. And so not only does it give you the case study, but it also gives you your answer key. So as you work through all these, they're all pretty much the same. Here's your assigned case studies. So there's 5 total. So what you would do is you would click the case study, just like you would the optional ones. You would read the case study, you would answer the questions, right? And then you have to submit it to me. The way you do that is by coming up here to assessments, going to assignments, and click case study. So these are the different folders. So once you come here, all you're going to do is click add a file, upload your file, click submit, and you're done. All right. I'm not going to be really, really hardcore on these. I want to see that you understood what the case was saying, that you could answer the questions in a logical fashion, but I'm not going to pick you apart. Okay. So I want to see an effort and I want to see a good background. Those are the 2 main things I'm looking for. So again, there's different folders, one for each one. You are only allowed to submit a file once. So once you submit that file, it is your final copy. If you accidentally put, the renal case study in the endocrine folder, just send me an email and I can fix it. Okay, no big deal. So if we go back to our content, back to our table of contents. So as you bounce around the course, down here underneath the assigned case studies that we were just talking about, you're going to see midterm and final exams. So you do have 2 midterms and 1 final exam for the course. And you'll see them under assessments and quizzes. So we've talked about the assignments tab that you'll use for your case studies. We haven't talked about grades yet. So when you come into grades, what you're going to see is that you have your 5 case studies, you have your Prep U modules, which I'll get to in a second, and you have your 2 midterms and your final exam. So this is the breakdown. So when you log in, if you've done your midterms, if you've done a couple case studies, you'll have all those marks. So back to home again. On the home page, so as soon as you log in, you are also going to see the news. So if there's something coming up in the course, if there's a discount on a textbook, which doesn't happen very often, but maybe it will, things like that, this is where you're going to find it. Also right here, you can see the student guide, which has a lot of really good information, the exam request form. Now, this is where you're going to go to book your exams. And by book your exams, what I mean is you basically have to schedule a day to do it. This means that I know you're not going to keep it open for a long time, that you're scheduling your time. Now, pre-COVID, all of these exams were invigilated, meaning that there was someone there to monitor you, much like the situation at NBCC. However, during COVID times, it's a little bit different. So these are still closed book exams. However, right now, we don't have invigilators and we don't have that mechanism in place. It's coming down the pipeline, but we don't have it yet. So you fill out your exam request. I would give them at least a week, if not 2. And then they're going to email you back with a password for the exams. So all of the exams are password protected. If for some reason you have to withdraw from the course, right? Because this course is part of that LPN to BN pathway, I would actually approach the nursing faculty first before you submit a withdrawal form, because they may be able to guide you, because this isn't a standalone course, it's part of a program. And lastly, there's just my instructor information. Now, I am going to walk you through the syllabus. So this syllabus is basically a contract between you and I, right? So everyone is assessed the same way, everyone goes by the same guidelines, it's just kind of the way it is. So that's who I am, there's my email address. So I'm not physically in Fredericton, and I guess like everyone else now anyway, the appointments are by phone or online in the virtual classroom or in Teams. And again, if you're a more recent student at NBCC, you'll already be familiar with virtual classroom and possibly Teams. So for course assessments, you have 20% for your open book mastery quizzes. Your case studies are 10%. You have 2 midterms that are 20% each. You have a final exam that's worth 30%. And the final exam is cumulative, meaning that it covers all of the course content. However, the last third of the course is more heavily weighted. So it gives you a bit of an advantage there because the newest information is the stuff that you have the most questions on. So again, midterms and finals are all closed book. And the invigilation policy will change depending on what happens with COVID. So it just says, please see the exam folder for the most current policies. There's your textbook. You can order it through the bookstore. It is quite a bit more expensive than if you just buy it directly from the publisher. And here is your breakdown. So again, there's 8 modules for the course. So you do 2 modules, you do midterm, 3 modules, midterm, 3 modules, midterm, or final rather. So it sounds like it's a bit nuts because it's 4 chapters, 8 chapters, 5 chapters. It's a lot. However, in blood and immune, a lot of that content you've already covered, right? What's a red blood cell? What's plasma? What's in plasma? What's a white blood cell? What's the immune system? So a lot of that really basic information, I'm not going to touch. I'm going to stick to the objectives that you have listed for assessment. And all of the review objectives are your responsibility to make sure that you already have that kind of semi-fresh in your mind. So even though we're covering the majority of a very substantial book, a lot of this is going to pull from the A&P that you already took. Sorry, A&P is Anatomy and Physiology that you already took in your LPN program, and the pathophysiology that you did there as well. So it's going to pull on both. So a lot of the more basic information is already covered. So we're going to kind of just do that middle ground between the LPN and BN program. There's the breakdown of the final. So again, 40% of the questions will come from modules 1 through 5, which are covered in the first 2 midterms. 60% of the content will come from the last 3 modules because there was not a midterm on those as well. Here's your deadlines for the course, just talking about whether you're dropping it in academic policies and financial policies. All right, I want to run through the suggested schedule with you quickly. So as this is an open entry course, the email that you get when you register is going to tell you that you have a full 6 months. However, you're in the nursing program, right? You're in the LPN to BN pathway, which means you have deadlines for that program that are outside of the deadline on that email. So you're going to be bound by the nursing deadline and not the CEL course end date. So I built a schedule for you. Because this is open entry, you can go at your own pace. So please feel free to come in and edit this as you see fit. I did upload it as a Word document for that purpose, right? If you start blaring through stuff and you can get your midterm done, 3rd week of September, that's great. If, something happens and it slows down, then you can make up for that time later on. But I wanted to give you specific goals, right? I wanted you to write your first midterm at the end of September or very first couple days of October. Write your second midterm early in November, because you do have that fall reading week, the 9th to the 13th. And you have to write your final exam during or before that exam period. And for UMB, that's between the 12th and the 21st of December. Please keep in mind that I know you're doing a number of courses at once. So you want to adjust this timeline if you have other exams with set dates, right? If you have 2 exams, one on the 30th and one on the 1st of October, you may want to write this before to get it off your brain, or you might want to write it after. Basically, what I'm saying is make a schedule that suits you. I've given you something to start with, but if you don't follow the schedule, if you get behind, this is going to be a very, very hard course to catch up on. And I don't say that to scare you. I say that because it's true. Because you guys have already done your anatomy, physiology, and 2 patho courses with your LPN program, you guys are well aware that these courses are very intensive, and so you're going to have to stay on top of the content. So I hope this is helpful, but again, it's in a Word document, so you can take it and manipulate it and do whatever you want with it. Set reminders and due dates and, have your phone dinging like crazy when you have to get a certain thing done. But please make sure to stay organized and watch your time frames. All right, guys, that's really it. I just wanted to walk you through some basics so that you can get started. There's lots of resources on there. If you're feeling overwhelmed, please take your time, go nice and slow, go through the materials. But first and foremost, grab that schedule and adjust it for your needs. And that way you have your time frames for things. And use that in conjunction with what the other instructors give you for their courses. So I hope this was helpful. Please again reach out if you have any questions, and I'll be touching base soon.